Apple's WWDC for 2025 was different from what we usually get. So right off the rip, all of Apple's operating systems are getting renamed numerically. So instead of individual OS history version numbers, they're all just being renamed for the next iteration to just 26 in reference to the year that the majority of devices would be running these new operating systems. So the big change across all of their devices is a visual change that they call liquid glass. And it's a design that's inspired by how real glass interacts with light, like it bends and refracts and reflects light across different layers of the interface. And when you think about it, there's a lot of stuff happening when light interacts with glass, and they've tried to capture a lot of those details in the visuals of their new UI. But the name of liquid glass is just so on brand for Apple. It's not like Apple is the first company that's come out with like a transparent glass UI, right? I mean, Windows Aero did it years ago, and a bunch of operating systems for phones have it. And Apple's iteration of it, I must say, at the very least, it's like the most high effort. Like if you look at just the zoomed in shots of this stuff, it looks really cool. Like when they were punched in on the text, it looks like a bubble of water, like how it bends the light around the edges like that. It's visually very interesting to look at, especially when it's a device that's close to your face like your phone, but they've applied it to all of their OSs. The other one that I thought was interesting was like the TV OS, where when the UI pops up, it's not just some simple translucency effect. They have all these little details that make it look like there's different thicknesses of glass in the elements, of liquid glass across the UI. It has a lot of detail and a lot of effort put into it. But there's a few things that come to my mind. First is that as cool as these transparency effects look, it's one thing to just like kind of admire them from afar, but it's another thing to use it. I find that a lot of them are just distracting when you're actually trying to get stuff done or just like use your device. As an example, if you're trying to just look at text punched in, you just want to see the enlarged text. You don't want to see all these like little text effects on the side that make it look like it's looking in a glass bubble. As cool as it is, I just find it, for me, I think I would just turn off all of that stuff if I could. And I think a lot of people would do the same. But the other thing, all of these visual effects, the transparency, the different layers, all of it, you got to use the GPU and RAM and consequently battery life on these devices. Like all of it definitely taxes the system in some form or another. And when you look at the list of phones that can run iOS 26, it's nothing crazy. They even have like the iPhone 11 on there, so I imagine any iPhone with 4 gigs of RAM or more could do it. But the devices with less capable hardware have some kind of like adaptive rendering, or maybe they just have a lot of the visual effects turned off. But when it comes to the macOS devices, it's a little bit different. For the laptops, if you're running Apple Silicon, you're good. But if you're running one of the older Intel chips, you need one of the more powerful Intel laptops. Like you can't run the 2020 MacBook Air. That seemingly won't be able to pull off macOS 26. I don't know how much of that is a GPU requirement versus a RAM requirement for the AI components, but it's disappointing to see a 5-year-old device just not being supported by this operating system. Now, let's talk about AI for a second. I'm thankful that they didn't have like a whole thing about AI. The AI stuff they did talk about was like spattered throughout their whole presentation, and it just seems like there's nothing wildly ambitious. It's just small things that we've seen from other companies, like live translations and more Genmoji stuff, some on-screen AI assistants. It's all just little tools that are nice to have access to. The thing they did with the photos was cool. Like you can take these 2D photos and apply some 3D spatial effects, and they looked pretty cool from the demos we saw. But it was interesting to me that they had no mention, there's no details about like the personalized Siri experience that they talked about in last year's WWDC. Like it just really seems like that whole product stack was just so underbaked when they did announce it that, yeah, clearly it's not ready even a year later. Okay, a few things of note. First, VisionOS now has clocks and windows and pictures that you can stick on your wall, and the personas in there look way better than they used to. But they also showed some marketing material where they had 2 people with Vision Pros on, and it looks very superfluous to me when I saw it. Now the other thing is iPadOS, which had a big bump in usability for multitasking. So it's much more like macOS in terms of like a menu bar and the 3 buttons on the top left that allow you to manipulate your panels and move them around. It's something that people have been wanting forever, so I'm very glad to see it finally happening on the iPad ecosystem. But the whole of WWDC was just typically, I mean, it's a developers conference, so there's a lot of software, but typically it's more about like usability and functionality. And this time around, I was really focused on the aesthetics of liquid glass. But there you have it. I mean, this is something that we're gonna be trying shortly. I have it installing on some devices right now. We'll see how it goes.